Contrasting Viewpoints with Ray Sclafani and Mark Hurley.
Ray has been one of the leading consultants in the financial services industry for many years, and Mark has annoyed countless people throughout the wealth management industry over the last 25 years with the white papers he has written. Today, they're going to provide their insights into what is really going on in the industry, some of the more absurd things they've seen, and also for anyone in this industry, some issues they should be thinking about as they try to build their business.
Well, Mark Hurley, summer's over, and it is great to be back with you.
It is fabulous to be back.
All right, let's get into it. We've got about half a dozen stories and then our main topic today. So what do you say we dive right in?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first story I want to reference comes out of FA Magazine in a recent Cerulli study indicating more than half of the marketplace, 53%, are working on building unified, managed household capabilities, with 37% making it a significant priority, which is up big time from last year. This sounds and smells like, to me, an expansion of the service offering, which was a big driver in the research paper, your first paper published earlier this year, Welcome to the Jungle. What's your take on what's really going on here?
Well, this is what's coming for everybody. Your wealth management firms, originally when they started back in the early 90s, they kind of did one or two things, and they got paid for doing that. And they, over time, they're having to evolve into becoming much more comprehensive wealth managers. And where they're ultimately going to wind up is look like a multifamily office, but for semi-affluent clients instead of ultra high net worth clients. In other words, they're going to take care of all the aspects of the financial aspects of a client's life and things even beyond that. But it's unfortunately going to be for the same fees they're getting paid right now. And that's the enormous challenge that's coming. And people are looking for technology to help them do this. And the Cerulli story talked about how that stuff's coming along, but not quite fast enough.
So in other words, expanding the service offering is going to be paramount to being competitive. Doing it profitably is tricky. And it sounds like that the greatest benefit that many of these firms are talking about and researching, and this unified managed account household, is really about tax minimization and generating tax alpha and truly improving financial outcomes for clients and advisors. How does an advisor go about sort of thinking about building out services and doing that profitably? Like, what are the steps they should be thinking about from your perspective?
Well, not that I ever disagree with Cerulli, but my view of it is it's going to be much, much more than that. The tax minimization is sort of an easy, low-hanging fruit. They try to find a way to look across all the family members and find a way to be a little more tax efficient and provide some demonstrable value added. Where ultimately we think it's going to wind up is going to be, they're going to go from simply managing wealth to playing a role in helping create the wealth. They're going to help people who are business owners run better businesses, and they're going to have to develop that expertise within their organization. They're going to have people who have, executives in certain types of careers. They're going to hire people who know as much or more than some of the headhunters out there, so they can help someone figure out how to maximize their intellectual capital and their earning power in doing this. This is all part of advisors providing a much more comprehensive service over time. And what I found interesting about this article was how the industry is starting to wake up to this. They're working up to one aspect of it, but you can see everyone's starting to figure out, we got to do something. We can't sit around waiting for this to come get us. Otherwise, we're going to get overwhelmed at some point. And a lot of this is being driven by some of the top firms in the industry. I mean, if you want to get a sense of the future, go look at Creative Planning Site. They're doing everything for clients.
It's interesting, not only Creative and Mariner and Merit and Lido and Wealth Enhancement Group, but, oh, by the way, turn the page and look at what Morgan Stanley and Merrill Lynch are doing. It's clear they've got departments that are focusing on being more competitive in being this multifamily office for the semi-affluent and affluent.
And we'll talk more about this later, but cyber is going to be a big part of that. I mean, for your own self-preservation, firms are going to have to start getting involved in client cyber. And we're already starting to see firms who are providing services to clients to help protect their cybersecurity as part of their offering.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next story. That was a real headline as summer closed out, was a U.S. District Judge Ada Brown in Dallas said the FTC does not have the authority to ban practices it deems unfair methods of competition by adopting broad rules. This whole non-compete agreement, CNN is reporting about this, and it's impacting the way advisors run their practices.
Well, I mean, the FTC came out and effectively, by diktat, banned all non-competes. Well, if you had in a business like a wealth management firm, that's That's problematic. Like you can't imagine problematic. And there was a ruling we talked about a couple times in earlier podcasts by the Supreme Court that kind of went.
It's the Chevron rule, right?
Yeah, it was sort of overlooked by the media because they were all worried about all the political stuff. But I think it had the longest impact on what this court did that year. The greatest, 50 years from now, I think they'll be talking about it, which was they overturned a thing called the Kelso ruling, which said that courts had to defer to the regulators' interpretation of laws, that unless the regulators were acting arbitrarily or capriciously, they had no authority to step in. And the court said, baloney. Supreme Court said, no, we have a system set up where the executive branch does one thing and the courts do another thing. And we're not going to delegate to the regulators what is our authority, which is to interpret the rules. And this is the first almost immediate example. FTC banned all non-competes. Federal judge said, baloney.
So Ada Brown, U.S. District Judge, concludes the FTC lacks statutory authority to promulgate the non-compete rule. The rule's arbitrary and capricious. The rule's unlawful agency action. It's set aside and shall not be enforced or otherwise take effect on September 4th, 2024 or thereafter. So it's a pretty serious ruling and one that'll have a ripple effect, tying right back to that Chevron ruling for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it just simply says now that this, what people I think aren't getting their heads around is this has taken an enormous amount of power away from the executive branch. It used to be whatever party got into office effectively could use the administrative state to really influence different outcomes by taking laws that Congress didn't specify in great detail and interpreting in a way that fit with their policies. Now it's going to be up to the courts.
Okay, let's move on to the next story. Advisors from Hightower and Merrill Lynch and Bison Wealth launched their own RIAs. I've been reading for years about the breakaway brokers, and they didn't move in big numbers. They're not moving in big numbers, but the ones that did move were large. It's interesting here. Now, for the first time, we're beginning to see these aggregators, and they're losing top talent. I think Dynasty's fallen into a similar camp. This is an interesting transition. So three big teams of advisors leaving their firms to start their own RIAs just in the final week of the month of summer. It was very interesting timing.
Yeah, I mean, the aggregators, I'm sure they did plan this, for lack of a better term, very well, because the presumption was you buy these things, you got everybody handcuffed, you're good to go. And now you're seeing the next phase that we call welcome to the jungle. You're already seeing people trying to steal people left and right. You're seeing litigation. It's a great time to be a lawyer. And now you're seeing people that are going out and they're, saying, okay, you bought the firm, but you didn't buy me. I'm going down the street, start my own firm and compete with you. And where this is going to play an enormous role is that there was a wave of incredibly good wealth management firms that were acquired in 2020, 2021, 2019 timeframe. Some of the best firms in this industry, and their owners got paid extraordinarily well, but the people underneath them did not. And that's really the talent that's needed. And at some point, and Phil Palaviv has written extensively about this. I encourage you to read
sample practice. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just read everything he writes. That's my general advice. At some point, it's going to be a free-for-all. And what you're seeing here is the first inklings of the free-for-all trying to get the talent.
We often see advisors, founders, and controlling owners who do set up these large firms where they have strong next generation. They've done a good job to develop the next generation of leaders, the advisors. But when they don't have clear career paths, access to capital, implicit and explicit ownership, pathway to partnership structures, they become a risk to the firm if they don't put those in place.
Yeah, and we talked about extensively when we wrote that paper that litigation is a tool. It's not the end. I mean, you can sue somebody, and all that means is you've lost something, and they're going to lose something too. The real way the smart firms are going to do this is they're going to create it so that the financial incentives are such that someone to leave is so much more painful than staying. And what that means, though, is many acquirers didn't put into their calculus of what they paid for firms that they're going to have to allocate greater and greater percentage of the profitability to keep the talent. That's the big next wave.
Really big wave coming, and you can see it, especially as the industry seems to be shrinking in terms of the number of experienced advisors sort of launching careers new in financial services. So we'll be paying close attention there. Let's move on to the next story. And this one's an interesting, at a Think Advisor in the month of August, advisors are afraid to retire, and that's a problem. It's reported the reason advisors hang on is entirely psychological. Casey Jorgensen, head of the Dynasty Institute for Adaptive Leadership, tells Think Advisor in an interview, successors at firms are frustrated to the point where they're leaving and starting their own firms. They're giving up and saying, hey, we're out of here. So these two stories tie together. But what it really comes down to is that they don't know their identity outside of their career. I remember reading a white paper years ago that you wrote called The Psychology of Sellers and Buyers. And so it's that old adage, if you're not moving towards something, you're moving away from something. And many of these founders and controlling owners are really not signaling to their clients and their team what their plan is.
Yeah, and we were surprised many years ago before we wrote the paper, because we go into meetings where someone's put their firm up for sale, and we meet with a seller, and literally they were angry, just beyond angry, and we couldn't figure out what was going on because they're about to get paid a lot of money, and we hadn't done anything. And what we learned, we spoke with a very prominent psychiatrist at the University of Miami about this, who said that what you're walking into is the middle of a grieving process. They're being forced to give up. They're about to go through a phase of their life that's being forced upon them by something out of their control, their age. Nobody wants to get old. Nobody wants to have these phases come past. And the problem with a business like this is the young people aren't young anymore. But this grieving emotion is so powerful. I'll share an anecdote my dad shared with me once many years ago. My dad was an Air Force general, and there was a very prominent, famous 4-star Air Force general who was getting ready to retire. And you have a mandatory age you have to retire. And they had, the Secretary of Defense lined up. They had the band, everybody ready for the big parade, and they couldn't find the general. And he found out he was in his office working, and they had to send his wife in to get him out of the office to show up for the retaring ceremony. He kept saying, I'm too busy. Oh no, I got too much work to do.
I've got a whole plan.
This grieving thing is an enormously powerful emotion. But if you're a wealth management firm and you're a fiduciary, you got to keep in mind, you have a duty to keep the best talent in the firm. You have a duty, and this is a duty that overwhelms everything else you're doing. For the sake of the clients, you have to find a way eventually to go and make it so you can have an orderly transition at some point. In the words of that great country western song, how can we miss you if you won't go?
Right. Well, I think if I pull that thread just a little bit, Mark, I think there's something also there. I learned just last week, I was sitting with a group of advisors, and one of the advisors sitting at the table, quite successful, next generation leader in a firm. He happens to be 56 years of age, but he was telling me about his business partner, who was the founder of the firm, who was in his early 70s. And he said one of the big challenges they've had, similar to sometimes they've had with clients, and he was describing his learning about the beginning and the onset of the dementia, that his partner of more than 20 years is showing those early signs and is in denial about those early signs of dementia. And it's fascinating how many firms are actually dealing with this very issue.
Oh, God, yes.
And firms that are smart enough, forget just the role of fiduciary, it goes without saying, but just that standard of care for the client and for the team members. If you're not planning ahead, and what a great irony about our business, where so many great planners plan for the future, but they're not planning for their own businesses.
Yeah, what they should consider doing is going and getting some executive coaching. They pick a date by which they know they're going to be gone, and they start spending years in advance, several years in advance, start planning what they want to do, so that the point that they get to that point where they're stepping away from the business, they're not grieving, they're actually excited about what comes next.
You had an advisor in Florida tell me that his wife would not let him come home, and he could only play golf so many days a week and needed somewhere to go. And if you don't have those hobbies, those philanthropic aspirations, and you don't have a game plan, then coming to the office every day isn't the answer. So exiting gracefully and purposefully with a plan of intention for the future is really what you're describing. In my book, You've Been Framed, How to Reframe Your Wealth Management Business and Renew Client Relationships. Chapter 4, I've gotten more positive feedback about Chapter 4 than any of the chapters. The chapter is called The Big Fat Lie, that sooner or later the day will come that you got to possess that competency and game plan to move toward that role in the future. And it's about success and succession. So I thought this article was a really interesting insight. And when it comes down to it, most don't have an identity outside of their career, and they're nervous about not having an income stream. Although for many of the high performers, that's probably not as much of an issue, but it's really about doing something with the energy that you've got, but doing something in the future that's a game plan, and most don't have it.
And having the courage to go do it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
So this is an interesting topic. Okay. And the average age of advisor continues to go up with each and every year. Okay. Let's go to the next story out of CityWire. And this is an interesting one. I'd like you to explain this a little bit. Raymond James faces a suit seeking class action status over cash sweep programs. What's interesting is I don't know that everybody really understands the issue. This complaint compares the interest rates for Raymond James sweep programs, which range from about 25 basis points for balances less than 100,000 to 300 basis points for 10 million and above, to those of other financial institutions, showing that companies like Vanguard or Interactive Brokers and Fidelity had higher rates among multiple cash balance brackets. So this sounds really technical and confusing. Give us kind of an overview of the real issue. Raymond James isn't the only one sort of in camp here.
Yeah. A sweep account is simply saying every day, at the end of the day, they look to see if you have any excess cash in your account and they invest it in something. And what the trial bar is arguing, that where it was invested did not generate a high enough yield, therefore the client was disadvantaged. And of course, like anything else, when given the opportunity, they're suing. The challenge I think they're going to face is, one, all this has been fully disclosed, and most of the people you're talking with have financial advisors who've disclosed this. So you can argue some sort of damages, but let's say you have an extra $1,000 in your account, and for one day it was invested at 1% instead of 3%. You're not talking about a lot of dollars. But for the trial bar, because it was done across so many thousands of clients, this is an opportunity for them to sue and then get, a coupon for an extra 10 cents for all the disadvantaged people and get $3 or $4 million in legal fees.
So this is not about what the clients get. This is
entirely about what the trial lawyers get.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting. So what are some of these advisors that are affiliated with these broker dealers likely to face in communicating with their clients?
Well, again, it's the simplest way they should communicate it is all we're talking about is 10 cents or $10. We're not talking millions and millions. You may see a headline that
the headlines are blowing this out.
The headline, there was $20 million, but we're talking about clients. It's the excess cash not invested, and they're getting a host of services for using the custodian or using the brokerage, and the custodian and brokerage has to make money or they can't provide the services. It's not even clear to me that the trial bar will prevail here. It may just be the threat of litigation. They'll agree to write some check just to have this go away and have this headache go. What I find intriguing is you don't have the CFPB getting involved. And if the CFPB thought that
there was a real
truly
issue
being
here,
disadvantaged, they'd be all over this.
Yeah, got it. So
they're leaving it up to the trial lawyers to go do it themselves.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's important we cover stories like this so that advisors listening can really think about how to communicate with clients and get ahead of it, which is what you're talking about. Okay, so next story. Let's just get into it. You have got to be kidding me. I know this is your favorite part of each of our episodes because you get to riff on something totally ridiculous. This one feels for me, I just will tell you straight up, a tinge too political. But in investment news, it was reported that the Minnesota governor has tenured as a teacher, National Guard member, and elected official, gives him a unique 3-stream portfolio of pension income that is rewarding him richly. The teacher's pension fund, a teacher's pension that could be as little as $12,000 annually. The state employee requirement account worth $65,000. The pension as a former congressman of $35,000, and the National Guard at $8,200. It doesn't sound that rich to me.
I mean, if I'm doing my math correctly, and he's married, I'm guessing his Social Security is more in aggregate than all of this. Look, those who know me will recognize I'm not exactly a left winger, and even I think this is nuts. It's a silly season. A publication like Investment News, someone there in the editorial staff just said, "Come on, this is absurd." Instead, they effectively took an article someone else had written and thought it'd be great to trumpet all this money this guy's getting, and it's not a lot of money.
So the message is to the trade pubs: stick to your knitting.
Yeah.
All right. So let's dig into a meaty topic. In your most recent publication, we should highlight that your firm, Digital Privacy and Protection, website dpripro.com, published its first white paper around the realities of cyber threats. By the way, could you not find a better URL for your company than DPRI Pro?
Keep in mind, our company is not a retail business. All of our services clients can only access them through their advisors. So we're an institutional company. We intentionally keep a low profile. And if you go to our website, you can download papers. And you'll see it's really just information for advisors, not for end users. So that's intentional.
Okay, that's a good explanation. So I'll repeat it because everybody that's listening to this podcast and episode is probably going to want to get a copy of this white paper because it's tremendous, rich with a roadmap for how to approach the realities of cyber threats. So DPRIPro.com, that's the Digital Privacy and Protection. The SEC announced in July that its goal to finalize new cyber rules were going to be published in October. And so although it postponed a bunch of proposed rules until 2025, it also specifically left cyber as the one it wants to get done next month. So this is a super hot topic from a whole host of perspectives for financial advisors and leaders of wealth advising firms. And it really appears as if many advisors aren't spending enough time talking about cyber. So do me a favor, if you could, before we get into the paper a bit and some of the roadmap that you've laid out for advisors, just give us your take on the significance of this issue, the expansion of services, and why this topic even matters to advisors, most of whom have cyber coverage and an umbrella E&O policy and the like.
Well, we can get into the insurance, which I would suggest if you look at all of the exclusions, it's probably not that robust. That said, cybersecurity has been a long-time priority for the federal government. Cybercrime is now bigger than the sale of all the legal drugs worldwide combined. It's $10.5 trillion annual business. And wealth managers are just ideal targets. They have lots of client information, which if stolen can be used for identity theft, which is a $54 billion annual industry. And they have trillions of dollars of client assets. Now, this report that we put together, which was not just me, it was also Brian Hamburger at Market Counsel and Carmen Sicales of CSE Cyber, who used to run the Army cyber warfare strategy. The three of us collaborated in producing this because the new rules are going to completely change the operating environment for wealth managers when they're final. They were proposed in 2022. They've been on hold. Now the SEC says it's a priority to get them done. And we can talk in a minute more about what's actually involved with the rules. But let's understand that if you're a wealth manager and you get breached in the future, this is going to dramatically impact all kinds of aspects of your business. And we found when we started our company a few years ago, we were surprised to see there was nothing out there that would guide CEOs, first, how to think about the issue, and secondly, what to actually do. And so the three of us got together, spent many, many months working on this. And we provide both a framework that CEOs can use, but also a step-by-step guide of what firms need to do to protect themselves depending on their business model.
So a couple of things. Let me just pull a couple of threads here. So this report includes background information of the business implications of the new rules, core concepts underlying any successful cyber strategy, but also who the bad guys are and how they attack wealth managers. Let's get into that just a bit. Who are the bad guys? I think everybody maybe thinks Russia or China or North Korea, but be more specific. And
Sure.
and how are they trying to attack wealth management firms? And how do they looking to get into these systems that advisors have spent so much time building their tech stack?
Sure. The cyber criminals can be generally broken into two groups. One group is made up of organizations in countries like Iran, North Korea, Russia, and China, and which are incredibly sophisticated. They're run by people who by day are either intelligence or cyber warfare officers for their country, and by night they moonlight as cyber criminals. And they've shown their ability to breach anything. Blockchain gets breached, the DoD gets breached, the CIA gets breached.
Well, we just had 300 million Social Security numbers breached.
It's nonstop. The other group out there, which there are thousands of these people who are doing this, are organizations that are in every country, including the United States, which are much smaller, but are extremely sophisticated also. With wealth managers, all the industry's focus to date has been trying to protect against someone getting directly into their systems. The reality is that's sort of like the Maginot Line, is the way to think of this. The whole industry is focused on building this giant wall to keep the bad guys out. Well, the bad guys have found a way to go around it. And what they're doing is increasingly indirectly attacking wealth managers, because the largest attack surface to hit a firm is not the technology itself, but it's where people intersect with the technology. And wealth managers are particularly vulnerable because bad guys have found a way to get to them through both their clients and through remote working employees.
Okay, so in other words, I think you're dispelling some foolish notions about cybersecurity. Here's what I'm hearing. First, executives and owners assume that this can largely be addressed by acquiring the right tech stack.
Yeah, and that's an industry-wide myth propagated by sellers of technology.
Right.
And
Okay.
look, there were 7 firms breached in the last 3 weeks that I know of firsthand, and every single one of them was an indirect attack.
Okay, so the second mythology here, foolish notion, is that industry executives also feel that it's inappropriate for their organizations to get involved in either their clients' or employees' personal cybersecurity.
Yeah,
This is a big one.
As we said in the paper, it's sort of like a pig feeling it's inappropriate to get involved in a ham and egg breakfast. Just as it's not up to the pig. Unfortunately,
where do you come up with these analogies?
Unfortunately, it's in the paper. Unfortunately, if you own a wealth management firm, the option of ignoring this has been stripped completely away, because under the new rules, SEC doesn't care how you're breached. You get breached, you're breached, and almost all the breaches right now are indirect attacks. It's by going through a client or going through an employee. Either everyone's heard the term social engineering attacks. That's a fancy way of saying I'm going to dupe you into doing something you shouldn't do. They're doing a stunning array of new types of attacks. For example, they're cloning the voices and images of clients and cloning the voices and images of employees, and they're using them to initiate fraudulent transactions and steal millions of dollars.
And how are the custodians in the RIA space reacting to some of this engineering?
Yeah, the custodians are in an impossible position, because if a client has a lot of money stolen, I can assure you they're not just going to sue their advisor, they're going to sue the custodian. And the custodians, they don't generate enormous margins providing their services, because they're providing an institutional service. But with that comes an expectation that the wealth managers will do all the things that good institutions do, which is have good cybersecurity. But what's happened is that overwhelmingly most of the industry has ignored this today. At the T3 conference that Joe hosts every year, which is great event, they did a survey of participating organizations and asked, how many people have actually done something about cybersecurity? And 75% of the people who participated in the survey said nothing.
At least they were honest.
I'm sorry?
At least they were honest.
They were honest, but let's just understand how significant this is. Okay, the rest of the world is functioning one way, and the wealth management industry, when it comes to cyber, thinks it's still 1994. No, it's 2024. And under the new rules, if you get breached, this is the one existential threat to your business. You'll do fine any other way. You get a material breach, what's going to happen? Okay, under the new rules, one, you're going to have to turn yourself in. This is not like you can hope the SEC doesn't find out. Number two, you're going to have to inform every client immediately, and part of your permanent record that's going to be given to every current, future, and prospective client is that you lost clients' money and how much and why. Now, think about this. This industry exists largely because clients believe their money is safe by working with an advisor.
Yeah, it's that trust that they've built with the client.
Absolutely. And also, even though the firm's not that large, I don't have to worry. I have this great custodian on the other side, spends billions of dollars protecting me, and they do. But let's be clear. You're now going to have to say to the client, well, the thing about your money is safe? Not always. Additionally, we don't know whether this disclosure follows the firm if it gets acquired. And no one knows. I don't think the SEC's even decided that yet. Well,
that'll raise a real issue in terms of the enterprise
value. Who's going to buy your firm if you got to inherit
Yeah.
that face tattoo? Okay, that's not something that's going to be really attractive. And so you spend your life building this business with the expectation you may be able to monetize it. Boy, you want to damage their opportunity to do that. Don't have good cybersecurity.
Well, what really was alarming to me reading your paper was in the study that you guys conducted, 82% of all financial services company breaches were initiated through employees working remotely.
Yeah, and that covers banks, covers every type of financial institution. If you actually look at wealth management firms, most of the breaches we're seeing right now are either through clients going to employees or through employees themselves.
Yeah, and people are already beginning to report YouTube videos and Zoom calls, and now not just the audio AI duping, but also the video and how quickly this is getting better.
You can go to. 9 months ago when we started working on the paper, if someone had suggested we would focus on this idea of quote deep fakes, where you create either a video or a voice duplication of somebody, you would have thought we were kind of being futurists. Today, they're widespread use. There's a YouTube video where you can create a clone you can use on a Zoom call. There's a company for $4.95 a month. They will allow you to clone anybody's voice using AI software. And it's so accurate, it'll defeat voice recognition software. So, example of some of the crazy stuff that's going on out there.
Very quickly, I know we're bumping up on time, but and we're going to have a whole episode dedicated to this topic. But if you could just let's leave the audience with like maybe a few core concepts that underpin every successful strategy. So at least the audience can walk away from here starting to think about what they need to be doing proactively to take action.
Well, number one, if you're connected to the internet, you're going to get breached. Get over it. Everybody gets breached. As the former head of the FBI said, there's only two types of companies. Those that have been hacked and those that are going to be hacked. The question isn't whether you're going to be hacked, it's what happens after you get hacked. Number two, this is a lot like the Middle Ages, where you build a castle and you decide how many more feet on the wall do we need, and do we, what else do we need? Do we need boiling oil? Do we need moats? Do we need alligators? That kind of stuff. All of this is a resource allocation versus a risk tolerance calculus for CEOs. There's no perfect security, but you have to do certain things to protect yourself. And number three, because you're going to get breached, an enormous part of what you have to do is how do you make sure when someone does get in, you aren't materially damaged. There's certain steps you can take, depending on your business model, that geometrically lower your risk of a very, really, really bad outcome happening.
So we're going to cover those topics in greater detail in a full episode this month dedicated to this topic. Mark, let's leave it there. It's always great to connect with you. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.